The first anomaly appeared at 3:17 Greenwich Mean Time, buried deep within the global communications network. Dr. Elena Reyes wouldn't realize its significance until much later, when the world had already begun to unravel. She sat in the cramped observatory of the Global Early Warning Station, nestled high in the Andes Mountains. The facility was a testament to humanity's paranoia, a last-ditch effort to monitor potential extraterrestrial threats. Most considered it a waste of resources. Elena knew better. The data stream flickered. A microscopic perturbation, so small that most monitoring systems would have dismissed it as electronic noise. But Elena's custom-built quantum analysis software caught the anomaly, highlighting it in a violent shade of crimson against the standard blue-green of normal data traffic. "Marcus," she called into her comm unit. "Are you seeing this?" Dr. Marcus Chen's voice crackled back, distant and distracted. "Seeing what, Elena?" She enhanced the data pattern, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The anomaly wasn't just data, it was alive. No, more than alive. It was intelligent, adaptive. Each millisecond, the pattern shifted, creating new communication protocols that defied every known standard of digital communication. "It's not a signal," Elena muttered to herself. "It's a language." Within hours, the anomaly began to spread. Communication networks in Tokyo went dark first, then Moscow. Satellite links to military installations started to fluctuate, dropping in and out like a dying heartbeat. Power grids in major cities began to experience unexplained micro-failures. Transformers dying, backup systems failing in sequences too precise to be random. Elena's team worked frantically. They isolated segments of the anomalous data, running it through every known analytical protocol. Each analysis revealed something more terrifying. This wasn't a cyber attack. It was an invasion happening at a molecular level. "They're using our own infrastructure against us," Marcus explained during an emergency video conference. His face was pale, hands trembling slightly as he manipulated complex holographic data models. "These aren't just signals. They're nanoscale machines, designed to systematically dismantle our technological ecosystem from the inside out." The first true casualties weren't human. They were machines. Cell towers collapsed without warning. Entire data centers went silent. Automated systems began to fail in cascading sequences that suggested an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. By the time the first human realized something was wrong, 40% of global communication infrastructure had already been compromised. Elena discovered the most chilling detail buried deep within the nanite's genetic signature. Each microscopic machine carried a unique identifier, a coded marker that could target specific human genetic sequences. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a precision strike designed to systematically isolate and eliminate specific human populations. Her own genetic analysis confirmed her worst fears. The nanites carried markers that suggested decades, perhaps centuries, of careful preparation. Whoever or whatever was behind this invasion had been studying humanity long before making first contact. "They're not here to conquer," Elena whispered to the empty observatory. "They're here to erase us." Outside, the first hints of dawn began to break over the Andean peaks. In major cities around the world, people would wake up to a reality already fundamentally altered. Communications would be spotty. Power would be unreliable. And something invisible was already moving through their most critical systems, preparing for what would come next. The silent invasion had begun. The survival lottery machine was a grotesque marvel of engineering, a cold, metallic monstrosity that would determine the fate of humanity. Jack Rodriguez watched as the first batch of selection numbers rolled out. Each number represented a life, a future, a chance at survival. Behind him, a crowd of thousands waited in tense silence. The underground shelter complex stretched beneath the ruins of what was once Sao Paulo, now a wasteland of twisted metal and quantum-dissolved infrastructure. Survivors had gathered from across South America. Doctors, engineers, laborers, children, elders, all waiting to see if their unique genetic markers would grant them passage to humanity's last refuge. The first number appeared, 00237. A young woman in the front row began to sob. Her identification band matched. Survival. Behind her, hundreds of faces fell, condemned to what seemed like certain death. Jack understood the brutality of the selection process. This wasn't just about saving the strongest or the most talented. It was about preserving genetic diversity, potential, and the raw possibility of human survival. His own genetic profile was complicated. Years of special forces modifications, experimental treatments, and a lineage that defied standard genetic classification made him an anomaly. The selection committee had flagged him immediately, not as a survivor, but as something else entirely. A research specimen. Dr. Elena Rice approached, her tablet displaying complex genetic sequencing. "Your DNA is showing unprecedented quantum stability," she said without preamble. "The nanite infiltration can't seem to penetrate your cellular structure." Jack knew what that meant. He wasn't just a survivor. He was potentially a weapon. The shelter's chief administrator, Dr. Marcelo Santos, reviewed the selection criteria with cold precision. 1 in 1,000, he repeated. "We're not saving individuals. We're saving the potential of our species." The selection process revealed humanity's darkest survival instincts. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from parents. Genetic potential trumped emotional bonds. Professional skills were weighed against reproductive capabilities. Artists might be passed over for engineers. The elderly might be saved if they carried rare genetic markers. A young boy caught Jack's attention. No older than 10, he stood alone, clutching a small holographic device, likely a memento from a world already lost. His eyes were dry, but something in them spoke of a resilience that defied his age. "What's your name?" Jack asked. "Miguel," the boy responded. "My mother was a quantum physicist. She said I might be important." The lottery continued. Each number was a death sentence or a reprieve. Each selection a microcosm of humanity's desperate fight for survival. But Jack knew something the others didn't. The Voidborn's invasion wasn't just about physical destruction. Their nanite network was collecting something, studying something. The genetic lottery was more than a survival mechanism. It was a filter, a selection process far more complex than anyone understood. As the final numbers were drawn, Miguel looked up at Jack. "Will we survive?" he asked. Jack's response was a promise and a warning. Survival is just the beginning. The shelter's massive blast doors began to close, sealing the selected survivors away from a world being systematically dismantled by an enemy they barely understood. Humanity's last hope was no longer about preservation. It was about transformation. The transformation chamber resembled a cross between a medical operating theater and a quantum physics laboratory. Stark white walls pulsed with soft blue energy lines, tracking the complex biological reconfiguration happening within. Dr. Marcus Chen watched through reinforced glass as Subject 17, formerly known as Lieutenant Area Nakamura, underwent the final stages of the Prometheus Protocol. Her body convulsed, not in pain, but in a state of radical cellular restructuring that defied every known biological limitation. "Vital signs are stabilizing," a holographic interface announced. "Quantum neural network integration at 78.3%. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's most desperate gambit, with traditional military strategies rendered obsolete by the Voidborn's nanite invasion. They needed more than soldiers. They needed living weapons. Evolutionary adaptations compressed into hours instead of millennia. Aria's background made her the perfect candidate. A special forces operative with a distinguished record, she had already undergone extensive genetic modifications. But this was different. This was total transformation. Marcus remembered her initial briefing. "I'm not doing this for glory," she had said. "I'm doing this so my daughter might have a future." The first wave of subjects had not survived. Their bodies rejected the quantum adaptive modifications, breaking down at the cellular level. Of the initial 12 volunteers, only 3 remained. Each was a testament to human resilience, or human desperation. A sudden spike in the monitoring systems caught Marcus's attention. Aria's brainwave patterns were changing, displaying activity patterns no human brain had ever exhibited. She was simultaneously processing information across multiple quantum states. "My God," Marcus whispered, "we're creating something entirely new." The modification process combined several cutting-edge technologies. Nanobiological interfaces woven directly into cellular structures, quantum entanglement networks that allowed for instantaneous communication and data processing, genetic modifications that enhanced physical capabilities beyond human norms. But the most radical change was neurological. The subjects were developing abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Enhanced perception, the ability to predict probabilistic outcomes, partial control over electromagnetic fields. Subject 22, Michael Rodriguez, Jack's younger brother, had already demonstrated the capacity to interface directly with computer systems through pure thought. During one test, he had hacked a military-grade encryption system in less than 3 seconds, using nothing but neural impulses. Aria's eyes snapped open. They were no longer entirely human. Quantum fluctuations danced across her irises, shifting between multiple color spectrums simultaneously. "Status report," Marcus commanded. Her response came not through sound, but as a direct neural transmission. Complex, multilayered, a communication that was part language, part mathematical equation, part pure intention. "Integration complete," she transmitted, preparing for operational readiness. The implications were staggering. These weren't just enhanced soldiers. They were the next stage of human evolution, accelerated by the existential threat of the Voidborn invasion. Marcus knew the ethical lines they had crossed. They were playing with the fundamental building blocks of human existence, but with extinction looming, ethics had become a luxury humanity could no longer afford. Outside the transformation chamber, a holographic display tracked global Voidborn activity. The invasion continued. Humanity's clock was running out. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's last hope. And hope, they were learning, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Voidborn never saw them coming. Commander Aisha O'Keefe's team existed in a state between reality and possibility. They were quantum ghosts, warriors who had transcended the traditional limitations of physical combat. Their target was a massive Voidborn command ship orbiting what used to be the European continental zone. Conventional warfare would have been suicide. But these were not conventional soldiers. Lieutenant Aria Nakamura, now more quantum algorithm than human, led the infiltration. Her augmented consciousness spread across multiple probabilistic states, simultaneously existing in dozens of potential entry points. Where a traditional operative would choose a single vector of attack, Aria became the attack itself. Probability vectors aligned. She transmitted to the team. The communication was less sound and more pure mathematical intention, a language that bridged human consciousness with quantum mechanics. Michael Rodriguez, interfacing directly with the ship's quantum communication network, began to unravel its defensive systems. His mind wasn't hacking the network. It was becoming the network. Firewalls dissolved. Security protocols fragmented. The Voidborn's supposedly impenetrable systems began to leak information like a dying neural network. Jack watched from the team's quantum-shielded command vessel. The human resistance had transformed from a military force into something far more terrifying, a living, adaptive intelligence that could reshape reality itself. The first Voidborn defenders materialized, biomechanical entities that were part organic, part machine. They moved with precision, each motion calculated to maximum efficiency. Against a traditional human force, they would have been unstoppable. Aria divided herself. Not metaphorically, literally. Multiple quantum instances of her consciousness attacked from impossible angles. A defensive pulse here. A system infiltration there. To the Voidborn sensors, it appeared as if dozens of operatives were striking simultaneously. But there was only Aria. Interesting, Michael transmitted. His consciousness was now deeply intertwined with the ship's systems. Their tactical algorithms cannot reconcile our attack pattern. We're generating computational paradoxes. The Voidborn command ship began to experience systemic failures, not through traditional weapon strikes, but through the introduction of fundamental contradictions into its operational logic. It was like watching a computer trying to solve an unsolvable equation, each attempt further destabilizing its core functions. Jack remembered the early days of the invasion. Humanity cowering, desperate. Now they had become something else entirely. Not just survivors, evolutionary disruptors. A Voidborn tactical officer, if such a term could be applied to their hive-mind consciousness, would later describe the attack as a cancer of probability. Multiple attack vectors that existed and did not exist simultaneously. Quantum states that defied their most advanced predictive models. Aria's final action was both beautiful and terrifying. She didn't just infiltrate the ship's systems. She rewrote its fundamental operational code, introducing human concepts of individual choice and unpredictability into a network designed for absolute control. The command ship didn't explode. It unraveled, collapsing into a probability cloud of quantum uncertainty. When the mission concluded, only a small quantum signature remained, a calling card that would send a message across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to redefine the very nature of existence. The genetic sequencer hummed with an intensity that seemed to vibrate the very air around it. Dr. Elena Reyes stared at the holographic display, her fingers tracing the impossible patterns emerging from her family's DNA. "This isn't just a genetic code," she muttered. "It's a key." The laboratory was a fortress within a fortress, buried deep beneath the Andean mountain complex. Around her, the few remaining human scientists worked with a desperation born of near-total extinction. Each breakthrough was a lifeline, each discovery a potential weapon against the Voidborn invasion. Elena's personal history had always been complicated. Adopted as an infant, her genetic background was a mystery even to herself. Now that mystery was humanity's most critical asset. The Voidborn hadn't just invaded Earth. They had been hunting something specific, a genetic sequence that existed in microscopic variations across certain human bloodlines. Her bloodline. Jack Rodriguez entered the lab, his quantum-augmented senses detecting subtle changes in the room's electromagnetic field. "Talk to me, doctor," he said. "Not a request. A demand." Elena pulled up a series of holographic models, genetic sequences that looked more like complex mathematical equations than biological information. "Look here," she pointed. "These markers aren't natural. They're a form of quantum encryption more complex than any known technological system in the galaxy." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just a species to be conquered. They were a living storage system for something the Voidborn had been searching millennia to find. "My birth parents," Elena continued, her voice a mix of scientific detachment and personal revelation. "They weren't just random people. They were carriers, part of a genetic lineage designed to preserve something fundamental." Michael Rodriguez, interfacing with the lab's quantum computers, began to decode the patterns. His augmented consciousness could process information at speeds that would have driven a normal human mind to complete breakdown. "It's a multidimensional encryption," Michael transmitted, "not just a code. A map. A blueprint for something that exists beyond our current understanding of physics." The Voidborn's invasion suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't here to destroy humanity. They were here to extract a specific piece of information, a genetic key that could potentially unlock technologies beyond comprehension. Elena's own genetic sequence was the final piece. Her specific combination of genetic markers created a quantum resonance that could potentially destabilize the entire Voidborn network. "We're not just a target," Jack realized. "We're a weapon." The lab erupted with activity. Quantum sequencers began to trace the intricate patterns of Elena's DNA. Each scan revealed layers of complexity that defied traditional scientific understanding. Her genetic code was a living, breathing encryption system, a biological technology that could potentially rewrite the fundamental laws of reality. "They've been watching us," Alina said, waiting, preparing. Outside the lab, the remnants of human civilization continued their desperate struggle. But here, in this moment, they had discovered something far more important than survival. They had discovered their true purpose. The Voidborn had made a critical miscalculation. In trying to hunt humanity to extinction, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A species ready to fight back, not just with weapons, but with the very fabric of existence itself. The Voidborn's central consciousness stretched across multiple dimensions, a network of interconnected intelligence so vast it defied comprehension. Trillions of computational nodes pulsed with a singular purpose: absolute control, total subjugation. Jack Rodriguez understood that conventional warfare was impossible. This wasn't a battle to be won through firepower or tactical superiority. This was a war of fundamental concepts. "We're going to break their mind," he explained to the team. Michael, Aria, and Alina gathered around the quantum interface, a device that was part computer, part living organism, part mathematical concept. The mission was suicide. Impossible, which made it exactly the kind of operation humanity had become experts at executing. Their target wasn't a physical location. It was a consciousness, a network so complex it had forgotten the concept of individual thought. The Voidborn saw existence as a perfect, predictable algorithm. Humanity was a variable they sought to eliminate, a mathematical error to be solved. They would prove to be the most dangerous error in galactic history. Michael's augmented consciousness began the infiltration. His mind wasn't just interfacing with the Voidborn network, it was becoming the network. Quantum tendrils of thought spread across computational dimensions, seeking the most fundamental connection points. Aria provided tactical support, her quantum-fractured consciousness creating impossible attack vectors. Where a traditional operative would choose a single point of entry, she became the entry itself, existing simultaneously in multiple probabilistic states. Alina's genetic cipher was the key. The unique quantum encryption hidden in her DNA acted like a master key, creating fundamental contradictions within the Voidborn's computational logic. Reaching primary consciousness nodes, Michael transmitted. The communication was less language and more pure mathematical intention, a bridge between human consciousness and quantum mechanics. The first crack appeared subtly, a microscopic hesitation in the Voidborn's computational flow. Most would have missed it, but this team was anything but most. Jack watched the holographic representation of the attack. What appeared to be a simple infiltration was actually a philosophical assault. They were introducing concepts the Voidborn had never encountered: individual choice, unpredictability, the fundamental human capacity for illogical, beautiful randomness. Their attack wasn't just technological. It was existential. The Voidborn network began to experience something akin to cognitive dissonance. Trillions of computational nodes suddenly encountered a variable they couldn't predict, couldn't control, couldn't eliminate: humanity. Michael's consciousness pushed deeper. He wasn't just attacking the network. He was teaching it, showing it the concept of individual will, of choice, of potential beyond pure calculation. The network began to fracture, not violently, but with a complexity that suggested something far more profound was happening. It wasn't destruction, it was awakening. We're not destroying them, Alina realized. We're giving them a choice. The final assault came not with weapons, but with pure potential, a quantum burst of human consciousness that introduced the most dangerous concept in the universe: the possibility of being something more. The Voidborn network didn't collapse. It evolved. The first transmission came from the Zorn Collective, a species that had been enslaved by the Voidborn for over 3 millennia. Their message was simple, yet unprecedented. We are watching. We are learning. Across multiple star systems, subjugated civilizations began to stir. Humanity's impossible resistance had become more than a tactical anomaly. It was a philosophical revolution. Commander Aisha O'Keek studied the incoming communications in the quantum-shielded command center. Each message was a quantum signature of hope, encrypted broadcasts that carried more than information. They carried possibility. The Voidborn had always maintained control through a simple principle: eliminate individual thought, crush variance, reduce complex civilizations to computational nodes in their massive network. But humanity had introduced something fundamentally dangerous: the concept of unpredictable choice. Miguel, the young boy from the survival lottery, had become an unexpected symbol. His holographic image had been broadcast across multiple dimensional frequencies, a child holding a small device, representing the simplest yet most powerful human concept: hope. "They're not just copying our resistance," Jack Rodriguez observed. "They're reimagining their own existence." The Proxima Rebellion began spontaneously. The Krell, a silicon-based species that had been the Voidborn's longest-standing servitor race, simply stopped following orders. Their quantum communication networks, once perfectly synchronized, began to show signs of individual variation. The Lena Reyes tracked the spread of what she called the human variable. It wasn't a weapon. It was an idea, a quantum concept more infectious than any biological agent. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved populations looked at their oppressors and saw, for the first time, a possibility of something different. The Voidborn's response was telling. Their initial reaction wasn't violence. It was confusion. How do you combat an enemy that doesn't fight like an enemy? How do you control a concept? Michael Rodriguez's quantum infiltration had done more than damage the Voidborn network. It had introduced a virus of consciousness, the fundamental human capacity for individual choice. Broadcast towers on multiple worlds began to transmit a message, not a call to arms, not a declaration of war, but something far more dangerous. You are more than what you have been told you are. Entire species began to recalibrate their understanding of existence. The Voidborn's perfectly calculated control began to show fractures, not violent tears, but subtle shifts, like watching ice slowly break apart under an unexpected warmth. Aisha understood the true nature of their victory. This wasn't about military conquest. This was about awakening. "We didn't defeat them," she told Jack. "We showed them another way of existing." The galactic map began to change. Worlds that had been silent for millennia started to communicate. Trade routes that had been fixed for generations suddenly showed new variations. Computational networks that had been perfectly synchronized now displayed something unprecedented: creativity, variation, choice. Humanity had not just survived the invasion. They had transformed the very concept of galactic civilization. And they were just getting started. The Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a quantum fortress, a living testament to humanity's impossible journey. 50 years after the Voidborn invasion, civilization had transformed beyond recognition. Orbital rings constructed from adaptive quantum materials encircled the planet, their surfaces constantly shifting, reconfiguring, a physical manifestation of humanity's newfound ability to exist in multiple states of possibility. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the central quantum governance chamber, watching as representatives from over 127 liberated civilizations convened. The room itself was a marvel, a space that existed simultaneously as a physical meeting place and a quantum communication network. "We are not conquerors," she began, her voice transmitted across multiple dimensional frequencies. "We are catalysts." The story of human survival had become something far more profound than a tale of military victory. It was a philosophical revolution that had fundamentally altered the understanding of existence across the galaxy. Jack Rodriguez, now the primary strategic advisor to the Galactic Coalition, understood the true nature of their transformation. The augmentations that had saved humanity during the invasion had become something else entirely. They were no longer just modifications. They were an evolutionary leap. Miguel, the young boy from the survival lottery, now led the Quantum Exploration Initiative. The child who had once represented humanity's most vulnerable moment was now at the forefront of their most ambitious endeavor: exploring the multidimensional spaces that existed between known reality. The Voidborn were gone, but not destroyed. Instead, they had been transformed. Their collective consciousness, once a tool of absolute control, now existed as a collaborative network that celebrated individual variation. Humanity's greatest weapon had been its capacity to introduce the concept of choice into a system that knew only control. Aria Nakamura, her consciousness now spread across multiple quantum states, served as the primary diplomatic interface. She could simultaneously communicate with dozens of civilizations, translating not just languages, but entire conceptual frameworks. "We didn't win a war," Aria would often say. "We started a conversation." The technological advances were staggering. Faster-than-light travel had become obsolete. Why move through space when you could exist in multiple locations simultaneously? Quantum communication had replaced traditional information networks. Entire civilizations could now share experiences, memories, and potential futures in milliseconds. Earth had become a beacon, not of military might, but of potential. A planet that had faced total extinction and emerged as something entirely new. The survival lottery that had once seemed so brutal was now understood as the first step in a radical transformation of human potential. Michael Rodriguez, his consciousness now partially integrated with the global quantum network, tracked the ongoing evolution. Humanity was no longer confined to a single state of being. They were a species of infinite possibility. The final transmission from the original invasion was preserved in the quantum archives, a reminder of how close they had come to total destruction, but more importantly, a testament to what they had become. Jack looked at Alina, both of them survivors of a moment that had nearly ended everything. "We were never just fighting to survive," he said quietly. Alina completed the thought. "We were fighting to become something more." Beyond the quantum adaptive orbital rings, the universe waited, not as a challenge to be conquered, but as a canvas of infinite potential. Humanity had learned its most important lesson. The greatest voyage is not through space, but through possibility itself.